Hey there! So I was dumb enough to leave my stand in Indianapolis, so I'm gonna have to record this holding it just with my hand. That's the kind of thing I do. Hey, so this is going to be about my favorite books of the year, even though my reading year is not officially done. I am still reading A Little Life. I'm like 170 pages into it, which is not an accomplishment with that book. So far, it's really good. And I am almost done with Madame Bovary. I will finish that by the end of this year. I swear that to you on the graves of my ancestors. So, these are going to be 4 and 5 star books only, though not every 4 star book is going to be on here. Okay, so the first set of books I'm going to talk about are books that I do not physically have. One, because it was an audiobook, and two, because they were rented from the library. First one was an audiobook. That is The Orphan Master's Son by Adam Johnson. I read that on the car ride down to Florida from New Jersey, and that is a Pulitzer Prize winning novel about an orphan master's son, the son of a man in North Korea who ran a camp for orphans, and it's about the adventures he has throughout his life. He works as a government official on a fishing boat. He kidnaps people and brings them to North Korea so the state can use them. He also travels to Texas as a diplomatic mission, and then he gets arrested. He escapes from prison and he impersonates a North Korean general, one who is married to a famous actress. And it's just such an amazing book. I was looking for a reason to not give it 5 stars, but I just couldn't help myself. It was so good. I mean, the story is structured so well, it's so epic, and the characters are so well developed. And mostly it's so fascinating from a sociological perspective, seeing the differences between North Korean culture and American culture. You know, how North Koreans apparently think it's odd that Americans keep dogs or other animals as pets. You see, the North Korean people's relationship to the state under Kim Jong il, because it was written before he died. Just this, the way, because we think they're all brainwashed, and I'm sure some of them are, but most of them, they know what's up. They know that how tyrannical their government is, and it's fascinating to see how they lie to the government and how they lie to themselves. I'm sure there are some things that the author made up. Even if they are made up, though, it's so fascinating to read. It's fascinating, the world building, because it is world building. World building doesn't just exist in speculative fiction, it exists in literary fiction as well. So, The Orphan Master's Son by Adam Johnson, I give that an easy 5 stars. So the other so the other two books, they are the series. The series is a dystopian sci-fi that takes place primarily on Mars and throughout the solar system. It's in the future, where the solar system has been colonized by humans in a heavily stratified society where the ruling class are golds. They are hyper intelligent, hyper strong, and there are different colors. It's a color coded stratification where you have reds at the very bottom who are manual laborers. You have pinks who are sex workers. You have like silver and coppers who are bankers and lawyers and politicians. You have blues who are obsidians who are monstrous, like 8 foot tall soldiers. I only read the first two. Golden Sun, the second one, is better than the first one, Red Rising, because Red Rising, it's a slow start for like the first third. The main character, Darrow, who's the narrator, he's a red. He finds out that, he's been told his whole life that he needs to labor underneath the surface of Mars to prepare it for terraforming, but turns out that Mars has already been terraformed. So he gets recruited by the rebellion to overthrow the Golds and create a new society. I really enjoyed them, both books. Even though, like I said, I give uh, Golden Sun, the second one, a little bit higher marks. The character development of mostly the supporting characters, because Darrow is kind of one dimensional, at least for the first book. I have not read any other books in the series, by the way. But the supporting characters, especially the other Golds, Mustang, who's kind of a love interest, is so fascinating, and the politics of the world and the books are so interesting and intricate, and the world building is really fascinating and creative and original. And there's these amazing battle scenes, amazing fight scenes. And the second book, the end of it, has this incredible twist that I really did not see coming. I liked, I even liked the characters who were, quote unquote, the villains. It was so well written. There's four other books in the series. Oh no, well, there's. All right, so now. All right, so now onto the books I actually physically have. The first one I'm going to talk about is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This beautiful, thick book, first in the Stormlight Archive series. It's supposed to be 10 books. There's 3 out now. I think the 4th one is going to come out in 2020. This is a really... I don't really want to describe the plot of this book or give a synopsis of it because it's just so intricate and fascinating. But it's this fantasy world where you have these powerful storms shaping the landscape. You have this war between rival kingdoms. There's political intrigue. There's magic. Brandon Sanderson, he's one of the most, foremost voices in how to create magic systems today. It's very intricate. The characters are all really well developed. I mean, it is over 1,200 pages, and I would like to say that there's a reason it doesn't need to be 1,200 pages, but it does kind of need to be. And even though it's so long, but you just feel, even though it's so long, you feel so satisfied at the end. And I am planning on reading the other ones in the series and some other works by him, but I do not know exactly when, because they are so goddamn long, and you really need to carve out time to actually enjoy them. So this was an easy 5 stars. Highly recommend. Next book is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Classic American literature, retelling of the myth of Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel. These two brothers grow up the sons of a Civil War veteran, a war hero, though later they find out that his tales of his heroics and bravery are puffery. One of them inherits some money, moves out to California. He falls in love with this woman who, he thinks is perfect, but really she's tricking him and she's manipulating him. She gives birth to twin boys and then leaves soon thereafter. You follow his life, the life of his family, life of this other family who he befriends throughout the generations, throughout the decades. It's so rich and just so powerful. It's true high literature at its finest. There's just so many powerful ideas here about life and about human nature and humanity's relationship, our relationship to one another, to our families, to history. It's one of those classics that you hear so much about. You hear so many people telling you to read it and you never get around to it. I'm so glad I got around to reading this. It's probably one of the most perfect books I've ever read. Next one is a book I read for my Reading for Writers course in my MFA program, where you had to read works by published authors, analyze them, analyze the different things they do and what makes them successful. This book is really the only one I enjoyed of it. That is The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. These are reimaginings of folk tales and fairy tales, Beauty and the Beast, other animal bridegroom stories. I just burped. sorry. These are feminist retellings. You know, you see kind of the absurdities of fairy tales. So it has a great sense of humor. It's got beautiful writing style. She's just such a master of prose. It's so the tales are very absorbing. This is a book I'd recommend if you want something to read, but you don't want to commit to a full length novel. Just maybe read one every couple of days. They're so entertaining. They're so humorous, and there's a lot of very fascinating intellectual subtext. So that is, I gave this 5 stars, even though it's very quality, high literature and very entertaining. My next book is Circe by Madeline Miller. Another 5 stars. This is she holds Odysseus captive on her island for 2 chapters in the Odyssey, and Odysseus is only present for 2 chapters of this book. So there you go. It tells her story from being the daughter of a titan and a nymph, feeling like the black sheep of her family, feeling neglected, and how she gets exiled to her own island for eternity for using magic, which at the time is not something that's known among the ancient world, for being a witch. And she spends her life, learning magic, learning how to use spells, learning how to transform people into animals. And it's a very excellently written book, especially because it's character driven, and it takes place over thousands of years, but it doesn't feel long-winded at all. You just, because this is a goddess, this is an immortal being, but it feels so human, and you really identify with her. You identify with her struggles, with being neglected, with being ostracized, and her pain of losing her lover, Odysseus, and of being a mother, and of losing her child. Well, not losing her as in dying, but of having to see her child go away and have his own life. And it's just a very kind of heart-wrenching book, but it's also a very beautiful and very powerful book. So that is Circe by Madeline Miller. Madeline Miller, I said in a previous video, she visited my MFA program and she autographed this. She's a very nice lady, very smart, very well spoken, very fascinating to listen to. Next is a graphic novel that I read for the Newts Challenge, which was the follow-up to the Owls Challenge. That is Saga Volume 2. This is a part of a series of science fiction / fantasy nature. It's about these 2 aliens from warring races. Each from a different side, they fall in love, conceive a child together, and the series is all about them trying to find a safe place to raise their child in this universe. I love the themes of this book, the storytelling, because especially in this one, because it adds a new layer where you meet one of their parents, and you see this multi-generational conflict. The art of this series is gorgeous. I just love it so much, and I love, it's honestly boring for me to talk about this because there's nothing negative I can say about it. I love it's so intricately structured, it's so well paced, it's so beautiful, and all the characters have moral ambiguities. There are some that they're not exactly good, they're not exactly evil. Next, I have Nevernight and Godsgrave by Jay Kristoff, both part of the Nevernight trilogy. The final book in the trilogy, Dark Dawn, came out earlier this year. I have it. I haven't read it yet. Was hoping to read it before this video, but I just didn't. This is a fantasy that takes place in a world or a kingdom reminiscent of ancient Rome and Renaissance Italy. The main character, Mia Corvere, is a Darkin. She has the power to control shadows, which kind of makes people view her as unholy, as sort of demonic in this world where they worship the sun, and it's never night because there are 3 suns that rotate the planet, so it's never fully dark or it's only fully dark, I think, for a few days every few years. Her father was a very high-ranking member of the military. He tried to overthrow the republic and establish a monarchy, but he was executed. And it's all about her wanting revenge against the government officials who killed her father. So she joins this school for assassins to try to learn the skills necessary to avenge her family. And the first book is all about her assassin training, trying to become a full-fledged assassin. And that has an amazing twist at the end and an amazing action-packed finale. And the next book, Godsgrave, is about her joining these, sneaking her way into these gladiatorial competitions so that she can finally get close enough to the religious figure and the government figure who killed her father. And that is, I liked Godsgrave better than Nevernight, even though Nevernight is also fantastic. And the twist at the end of Godsgrave was just incredible. As I love a good twist. It's so hard to do a good twist, and Jay Kristoff did an amazing job with this. These books have a great sense of humor. The narrator is kind of snarky and sarcastic, and it really fits well with the dark gallows humor of the series. And the world is so amazing and creatively built and so layered and rich. And there are these footnotes that tell you extra information about the world, and you might think that's annoying, but I think that's a good way of world building without interrupting the story. And I love the main character of Mia Corvere. I think I said in a previous video, she's my new fictional crush. She's a great character. She's basically good, but she uses evil to do good, and that's one thing I love. And I don't know when I'm gonna get to start reading Dark Dawn, but I'm probably gonna pull an all-nighter on that one because I'm just so eager to see how it ends, even though some people have said that's the weakest of the trilogy. But who knows? Keeping my fingers crossed that it'll be good. And my final book is the library book by Susan Orlean, who visited my MFA program and gave a talk. This centers around the fire that put the Los Angeles Central Library out of commission for a few years. It's about the investigation of trying to figure out who the culprit was, or if there even was a culprit, if it was intentional. It's also about the history of the Los Angeles Library, the history of Los Angeles, the history of libraries in general. And it's very poetic that I read this book when I moved to Indianapolis, because Indianapolis, unlike the other towns I've lived in, has a really great library system and a really beautiful central library where I've started going to study and relax on the weekends. And this book and the experience of going to libraries, again, made me realize just how important libraries are as centers of communities, as hubs of knowledge. And this book is a great advertisement for libraries, because they're not just places where you can, it says in the book, it's not just places where you can go and read things. It's a place where you can feel a little less alone in our lonely world and feel a sense of community. And I just really loved this book. I only gave it 4 stars because it is a little bit jumpy, because it's the investigation and it's history, and it jumps back and forth between them, and it does feel a little incoherent sometimes, but overall very. Alright, so those are my favorite books of 2019. Let me know in the comments section what your favorite books are. Feel free to like and subscribe. I'm home now, the semester's over, so I am going to try to record some videos in advance and then release them once I get back to school.